There you go.
Hey,
Yay, perfect.
my first
So,
Instagram
yeah.
live.
What?
This is my first Instagram live.
And we are live now.
Yay.
Perfect. So, Alexandra, welcome to the show. It is an honor to have you here. Before we start, I have to give you an epic welcome to the show. So here you go with the cheering crowd effect. Here we go. There we go. Yes, sir. At some,
Oh, wow. Louder. Thank you.
at some point, they're gonna be real, but at some point. But in the meantime, it's gonna be like that. But anyway, but so before we start, I have to say that I think that you're a very talented person. But tell me, where does this passion for acting started?
Well, thank you for that. My mom I'm from the South originally, and so my mom has always said, and this is a very Southern phrase, that ever since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, I've been telling to be an actor. So that just means like ever since I was like a little one. So ever since I was a kid, I mean, as long as I can remember, I was doing monologues and telling stories on our like fireplace growing up, and I would make my family sit and listen and torture them with my long stories that made no sense probably. And then I got really into like the technique and the theory of it when I was in middle school. I really turned into like a theory nerd and was reading all the books about training, and then that continued into high school and college until here we are now.
So cool. Now, starting with your acting career, let's start with your career on theater. So you are known for being a classically trained actress, especially for Shakespeare, totaling more than over 40 different stage productions. So tell me, of the plays you have worked in, which ones are the one that you like the most?
Oh my God, that's such a hard question. That's a good one. That's a hard question. Yeah, I love theater. Theater is my first joy, first love, and I also love TV and film and voiceover obviously as well, but there's something about theater that's just, it's addicting, and the level of teamwork that you get in theater. But I mean, right off the top of my head, I did a show with the Philharmonic here in Los Angeles, which is our humongous, Philharmonic Symphony, and it's incredible. And we're at the Walt Disney Concert Hall, and it's this 3,000 seat auditorium, this massive stage. And so they were playing Mendelssohn's Midsummer underneath as we performed Midsummer Night's Dream, and that was amazing. It was a really quick rehearsal period. It was with this amazing director, Nancy Meckler from the Royal Shakespeare Company, and just to be able to work with her was so cool. But then on top of that, like the first time we all sat as a cast in that space and heard the Philharmonic play for us, it was just like a solo concert. Hearing them rehearse the music that we were going to be performing to, I like burst into tears. They played their first note. I was just like, oh, that's beautiful. So that was really It's not often you get to have live music like that underscore your performances.
Yeah, of course. That must have been like super epic, I'd say also.
Oh, it was epic. There were a lot of moments performing that where, well, there was one moment in particular where all the lovers in Midsummer fall asleep on stage, and so we're all asleep on these pillows, and then the Philharmonic plays this like 7-minute beautiful, and so you're just lying there. I mean, it's perfect. You're lying there with your eyes closed, relaxing on this stage, just listening to it. And it was hard not to smile because I was like, I'm supposed to be asleep, but it was so hard, like totally cheese out in that moment.
Oh, cool. And how you felt once everything was once everything was done, like how was that feeling?
Like once the show was completely finished?
Yeah.
Oh, it was sad. Like I always am so sad when shows close. Every play I do obviously has its own texture and tone to it because of the work itself, but also the people in it. Like you just with all your castmates, and you all become a family, and that was true for that show as well. And so it's always sad. That show in particular was a very short run, and so that's always hard too, because you feel kind of as soon as you're getting into the groove of things, the show ends. So it's always very sad, and you have to kind of come up with rituals as an actor to like release and let go and move on to the next one.
Wow, that's really cool. And from playing as Lady Macbeth in Scotland, Rosalind at American Repertory Theater, Helena at the Los Angeles Philharmonic, Elena and Edmund at Theatricum Botanicum, Clara in Moscow Art Theater, and a lot more. Out of those places, which ones are the ones that you enjoy the most? Besides the LA Philharmonic, which ones would be?
Oh God. Well, Moscow is interesting because Moscow's Moscow. Like it's Moscow.
Yeah.
And
I get it.
this show in particular was a lot of fun. We were doing it in English for a mainly Russian-speaking audience, and the cool thing about that was that even though there was this very large language barrier, the audience still loved it and still ate it up because the director of the show did it. It was a very visual show. There were lots, lighting effects and sound effects. The story was being told in multiple ways, not just through text. So that was cool. But my favorite out of those, my favorite experience, I don't think it was my favorite production I've ever done of this show, but my favorite experience was doing Lady Macbeth in Scotland, because we were doing it in an area known as Burnham Wood, which for people who are familiar with Macbeth, it's the witches say to Macbeth that the trees of Burnham Wood will come to Dunsinane the castle. So Burnham Wood is like this location in the show. So we got to do the show in Burnham Wood in front of this tree that is apparently the tree that inspired Shakespeare to write Macbeth. And so we were just in front of this like ancient tree.
That's so cool.
And that was like, the production itself wasn't that great, but that moment of, like doing the demon speech as Lady Macbeth is always a moment. Like it's always this very kind of out of body, odd experience. But to do it in front of that tree, again, it was kind of like that sleeping on stage with the Philharmonic playing beneath you, was that moment of, oh my God, I'm about to say these lines in front of this tree on this like sacred ground. It felt very holy and
of course. Yeah. Wow, that must have been like really like a very breathtaking experience.
It was, absolutely. That's a great way to describe it. And I think as an actor, you get really lucky when you find inspiration like that in the moment, where all of a sudden, oh, I'm going to use this as a catalyst to help me become even more present in this moment. And sometimes that happens, you hope that happens all the time in your performances. Most of the time it happens with your partner. But when you're fortunate enough for it to happen because of, this space that you're in, or there's this extra added element of music, or this extra added tech element or something like that you feel like you can kind of latch onto and say yes to, and it can really in the moment just like infuse the performance with this kind of surprising, exciting thing. And that's really fun.
Wow. And what are some of the things that you like about the characters that you played?
Oh, I mean, I think as an actor, this is, I think, one of my favorite, this is like, when I think about the reasons why I love acting, there are a lot of reasons I love acting. This is probably my most selfish reason for loving acting, is that every time you play a character, it's almost like this is going to sound odd, but it's almost like you find this little door inside of yourself that you didn't know was there. And you're like, oh, I'm capable of that. Or like, oh, I could thoughts, or like, oh, I could do that. And so over time, you realize that we are all just like this endless maze of potential and personalities and possibilities inside. So, I mean, every character I play, I know I'm getting closer to understanding them when I start to feel an obligation to tell their story and a responsibility to tell it. And I feel honored to tell their story. Like, I'm like, this needs to be told. It's important. Yeah. Because I'm like starting to find that door, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Wow. That's really inspiring though. And that's really interesting. That on my acting career, I only appeared in one play. And I only had one line. And I screw it.
Line.
Huh?
What was the line?
So the only line, my line was to say, and he, what was it? And he was born, or he's born, or he's, something like that was. So what happened was that it was in high school, right? And I needed credits because I was the worst student in the world. So then the teacher was like, the only thing that I can do, so we're kind of making a deal. He was like, okay, so we're gonna do this. You're gonna participate in this play, and I'm gonna give you all the credits you need. I was like, perfect, we have a deal. Yeah. Let's go. So I went, And because I went late, the kind of the director of the play was like, okay, so you're gonna do, so you're just gonna say one line. I was like, okay, I got it.
I can do that.
Like, perfect. Okay. So everyone was super nervous because it was like the last play for the school year, right? So everybody was super excited. There was this guy who was like, he was like super concentrated, and it was me who was fooling around because I was like, I only have one line, I got this. And like a lot of times the director told me, you got this, right? And I was like, yeah, I got this. Are you sure? Yeah, totally. Have you ever been on stage? 1,000,000 times. Okay, good. I was like, yeah, I got this. So everything was according to plan, everything was good. And then my moment came, and then I stood up in the middle because that was supposed to be that I was gonna stood like in the middle, and I was gonna say like, he's born or something like that. And when I stood up, and then I just see everyone, I just froze. And then I just like raised my hands, like, yeah, and I just remained like totally still. And then there's a video that you can hear someone telling me, you need to say it, like really whispering. So then I just said it, and yeah, so I just said it. And the moment I'm kind of done with it, I want to like go away because I was feeling like super nervous. So I started to walk backwards, and I fell. So I went, yeah, it was horrible. It was like the worst thing. But the good thing is that everyone was laughing. Like the whole crowd was laughing. So the crowd enjoyed it a lot. So at the end, so the whole play was done. And then like the director came to me like super angry, like, you ruined this. I pretty much I work on this project, and you pretty much ruined it. And when the people was still cheering and clapping and like making, yeah, like they loved it. I pretty much looked at him, and I was like, I just made you a favor on that, so you're welcome. And I left. And after that I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna do this again. No.
Like, I'm good. I'm done. That's a great story. That's
now tell me, what's your inspiration towards acting on stage?
Like, where do I find inspiration?
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, I think that. So you always start with the text. You have to start with the text, right? Like, what is it giving you? And I'm really big on text analysis. So in my mind, there's the writer has left behind 1,000,000 clues, and those clues are left in not just the lines themselves and the structure and where the scenes take place in kind of that bird's eye view, but also small details like punctuation or vowel choice or consonant choice, or how many operative words does your character have within the line. Like, the writer is constantly leaving little breadcrumbs, and so your first pass through of the text, you're only going to pick up on probably the major clues that they've left. But every time you read it, every time you rehearse it, you're finding more clues, and that just leads to more and more inspiration. So I always start with the text. I think asking why is one of the most important questions you can ask as an actor in that first stage. Like, why is this here? Why is my character saying this in this moment? And then moving forward from that, it's finding inspiration everywhere. Like, I love to make character playlists. I make character image boards on Pinterest of just art or photographs that make me feel like how I think the character is feeling in that moment. Or if my character is talking about a memory, I'll find pictures of that memory. Like, when I'm talking about, like, if you were doing one of your like high school, like that high school performance, like if I was doing that monologue, I would go, okay, well, what did the director look like, and what did the stage look like, and what did it look like at that audience? So I think work is really important as well, and vital. But yeah, text, images, music, and then otherwise it's just, you start thinking about it a lot. It's kind of like if you have a crush on someone and you like think about them, if you're like walking a dog or you think about them, you kind of get a crush on your character, and you just start thinking about them a lot. And then certain things will come to you, and then every new thought leads to a new one where it's like, ooh, that'd be cool if I did that. Okay, so if that's happening, ooh, then that means that would happen here. Ooh, and then that would tie that into that thing. So as soon as you start saying what if is the most important question after why that you can ask yourself, and that then leads to inspiration and creativity and imagination, and getting out of our head in terms of there has to be only one way to do this part. There's millions to do a part, and so it's embracing all those possibilities, and then first of all, you're trying all those things out to see what lands and what doesn't.
Oh, cool. And do you like for the characters also? Would you take a little bit also of inspiration from people that you met in the past, or you pretty much created out of nowhere, let's say?
Oh no, yeah. I mean, even something I feel like I'm creating out of nowhere is inspired by someone I've met or seen or interacted with. Always like it's always a collection of like I really think as not just actors, I think artists in general are kind of scavengers. Like we're constantly picking up like a gesture from that person or that person's voice, and we kind of store it in our body and in our brain. And so sometimes I'm aware of where that inspiration is coming from. Like I think I've played a version of my mom like many times, like, and I'm aware of it. But sometimes I'm not until someone maybe points it out and it's like, you remind me so much of Blake. I'm like, oh, maybe that's where that came from. I don't know. And then of course your fellow like, actors on stage and the director and the tech and production, like all of that obviously adds to the inspiration as well, because you're working with people who are at the top of their game too. And
yeah, of course.
Part of your process as well.
Wow. And also I think that it also motivates you, right? I mean, when you're working like with real professionals that they're taking it super serious, that as you said that they're on the top of the game, you also kind of like the vibe on that place must be like very uplifting, right? Knowing that you.
Yeah, I mean, something I always tell my students, I teach at UCLA and I coach, and one of the things I tell them when it comes to working, especially when they're starting out, I say, you cannot be the best person in the room. Don't be the best person at that table, because then you're not going to learn. So it's always push yourself to be in the rooms where you're a little bit scared, because around you can learn from. And it's like they raise that bar and you're like, okay, I got to jump so I can be at their level. That's always my goal anyway. Like every room I'm in, I want to be a bit like, oh my God, everyone here has a Tony, or like everyone here has a Globe nomination. You want to be in those rooms, because I think that little bit of fear, that challenge and intimidation, if you lean into it and you accept it and embrace it, can help you grow. If you push away from it and you hide from it and you make yourself small and you get into imposter syndrome land, but you got to like lean into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And tell me how you usually get ready before going on stage.
Oh man, it depends on the show. I love to listen to music. It also depends if I have like my own dressing room or not. Like sometimes depending upon if it's equity or how big the theater is, like you can have your own room. So if I have my own room and we can leave stuff in there, I'll typically like tape up pictures. I'll also tape up like all my like opening night cards and stuff like that from folks. But I still love to be with my castmates. So even if we're in separate dressing rooms, I always get to the theater early. I hang out with my castmates, talk, kind of shoot the shit, do a warm up. I always warm up on stage in the space so I can hear what in the space that day. And then I go back and I usually have coffee and then go back to my dressing room and listen to music, and I keep my door open so people can come in and chat. I want it to be as relaxed and playful and fun as possible, because I want to take that same like open, relaxed energy with me on stage. Like getting really, like I think sometimes people think that when we talk about focus and acting, it's like I have to be in this little box, and it's like nothing about that creative. It has to, you can still be focused and be open at the same time. And then when I'm on set, it's different, because when you're on set, you're in your trailer. Typically you're not with the people you're going to be shooting with, because maybe those people are already on location shooting the scene prior to you or whatever it may be. So when I'm in my trailer, I'm usually listening to music, I'm meditating, I'm trying to not be so much on my phone. So I'm reading books, journaling, things like that.
Oh, cool. Wow. And if you could give an advice to someone who recently started acting on plays, what would you say?
Fall in love with the work, like really fall in love with the creative process. You're going to get frustrated with the industry, but you're never going to get frustrated with the work and with your art and with your craft. And so oftentimes when I hear people who say that they no longer like acting or they want to quit, and I dig deeper into why they feel that way, it's because they've come to the realization that the industry isn't fair, which it's not. The industry is not fair. And on what they're feeling frustrated with is something that's completely outside of their control. So I always remind people, like, return back to the craft, your process, the art, the work. That will always feed you. And if you aren't finding satisfaction there, then it's time to do something else, which is always like a sad thing for people to realize. But sometimes I think we also have to normalize quitting in this career. And I put quitting in quotes because I don't think it's quitting, but I think there's a lot of people when they say like, you know, I've decided to get a regular job, or I've decided to put acting on the back burner. People can just feel such shame with that. And I think we need to normalize that. Audrey, actors, talks about it a lot. And I love that about her, because there shouldn't be any shame in going, this no longer fulfills me. But if it is fulfilling you, keep connected to the why of why you're in this career. Why did you choose this? And if it's because you want to be famous, you're going to be miserable. But if it's because you love the process and you love the people and you love storytelling and you love diving into human behavior and you love the process, then you'll be fine, because that will never let you down. I hope that answer made sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense, because actually like a lot of people sometimes they're gonna choose a career for money, and they're gonna get frustrated like a lot because it's not what they really love. And also I agree that there is that the industry, and I think like also like the world in general, is not fair, you know.
It's not.
That sometimes you're gonna have like, sometimes you're gonna be lucky, sometimes you're not gonna be lucky. And also I agree that sometimes you need to kind of regroup so you can like get everything like prepare mentally so you can get out again, you know.
I mean, I think a big thing for a lot of people to realize, and everyone comes to this their own realization of this at some point in their career, which is, I could be the best person in the room in terms of talent. I could be the most talented person in the room. I could be the hardest working person in the room, and still not book the job. Because there are so many things, so many factors that are not in my control, like how tall I am, or like, do I look too much like the girl they cast last week? Whatever it is, do I remind the casting director of his ex-wife? Like, there's so million reasons why you don't get cast, and it has nothing to do with your work level or your talent. And in most careers, if you work hard and you're good at it, there's a path and you can move up and you can become successful in that. And acting and the arts in general, it's just not like that. But it doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means that you're measuring your success in a different way.
True. Now, moving on with your awesome career, let's talk about your acting on TV shows. So you also appeared on TV on shows such as Chicago PD, This Is Us, Tales, Breaking Homicide, My Crazy Ex, Rolling High, IRL, Gilded Lilies, and a lot more. Tell me, what did you like the most about the characters that you played on those shows?
You know, I went through this phase where I was doing a lot of true crime stuff, which is fun. I got to play a detective for a year on this TV show called Solve, and then Breaking Homicide and Chicago PD. Like, those parts are always really fun because the stakes are super high, you know. Tried to kill this person, and so, or I've died a lot on TV too. Died in Tales, I died in Breaking Homicide. One of my friends for a while were like, "You're only ever gonna play the girl who gets murdered," and those can be fun just because, like I said, it's like they yell action and you have to immediately just kind of jump into the extreme circumstances of that moment, and you have to be screaming and crying and freaking out and like running around, and like those can be fun. And you know, usually you only do like 2 or 3 takes of those, and then you get this kind of like amazing adrenaline rush of being in that moment, and then you get to experience that and then be safe, you know, and then be like, oh, that's interesting. What I loved about This Is Us was I got to do accent work. The character was British, and it's always fun when you get to, you know, dive deep into that. And flashback scene, so it was in the 90s, so the wardrobe was awesome. Like, the fitting for that was so cool. The women who the women and men and that clothe the cast of This Is Us, they're all amazing, and they pulled all these incredible like vintage 90s designer outfits, like vintage Chanel and Dior, and so that was fun for like the character creation aspect of that part was really fun because I really got to work with wardrobe on that and the accent. And then of course This Is Us is just such an amazing show. It's, you know, TV is interesting because unless you're working on a show for a long period of time, like I was with Solve, that kind of feels like a play, right? Because you get to rehearse, you get to be with your cast, you get to build that camaraderie. Otherwise, when you're doing TV and you're popping in just for a week or just for a few days, you're in this like super intense kind of boot camp experience, and then you're done. And so it's these little kind of flashes in the pan that are exciting sometimes.
How cool is that? Huh. And tell me how you managed to switch between the character and yourself.
I think, it's kind of talking about that thing earlier with like finding the door, like the character in you, and you have to know where that line is of what you're kind of tapping into when you're going into that zone. I like to think about it physically, like where do I feel it in my body? Like where does this character live physically within me? If this character was to only be able to say one thing, what would they say? If this character was like a color in my body, I know this is sounding super heady, but like what color are they? And that's my way in, and then it's super easy to pull out. Like you just be able to snap your finger and go back to being you. And I always tell my students, like, being in control of your emotions doesn't just mean being able to burst into tears on the spot, which you should be able to do. It also means being able to turn that off immediately, because no one with that actor on set who's like out of control. And I think some young actors like that feeling. It feels exciting and it feels like, ooh, watch me, I'm so in it. But it's really just self-indulgent, and it's not professional. And so I think that's an important key. Like, you have to be able to drop in quickly and pull out quickly and be like, I'm back. But also recognizing that it's always just you, it's just you in heightened circumstances and heightened stakes with different relationships. And that's the fun part about acting. It's like, you look at Lady Macbeth and it's like, she does some horrible things in that show, but we all have the ability to do horrible things. Just don't want to admit that or go there.
But maybe it should be like for example, for people who make like really long shows, I mean, maybe for them that at some point you're gonna be like leaving that character, like it's gonna be hard at some point, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, if I'm working on a show or a character for a while and I've picked up a certain gesture for that character, I will find that gesture starting to creep into life. Like, I find myself doing that movement, or if I'm doing a lot of accent work, even sometimes like some of their sounds might shift over into my everyday speech. But character and the illusion of character only ever comes from what we're doing. So, as acting is a verb, we always talk about verbs when we act. We say that people have good character because they do good things, right? We say that all the time in life. Like, Dan's a good guy, he does good things. Alex is a bad woman, she does bad things, right? It's based on what you do. So the line between you and the character is just, you're doing different things than they're doing. And if I'm watching you consistently, murder people, then I'm going to go, wow, Lady Macbeth is a horrible person, even though technically Lady Macbeth doesn't do any of the murdering, her husband does. That's the line between you and the character. Is like, on some of their physical attributes and their vocal quality, but as soon as you start acting like them, then some wires have been crossed.
It's gonna cross eventually, right? Yeah. And tell me, do you relate somehow with all the characters that you have played?
Oh yeah, I think you have to. If you don't, then you're playing at them. Then it's a performance. Good acting isn't acting. It's living and listening and breathing in the moment, doing the things that character does, and then, or like, I'm actually unraveling and piecing out something that the character is unraveling and piecing out. Like if Lady Macbeth, if the thing that's driving her, and I've played her now like 4 different times, and every time I do it, what she is striving for is different, because what I'm striving for in my own life is different. So maybe the first time I did her, it was like, I in my own life was struggling with the idea of ambition and what does it mean to be successful in this career, and what does it mean to have power, and Alex was struggling with that. So that's what I'm naturally going to be exploring as her. And so that's my connection. So when the audience is seeing Lady Macbeth do these things, they're going, wow, watch Lady Macbeth do XYZ. But really, it's just me. It's just me under the guise of Lady Macbeth, exploring all of that stuff. So at the end of the process, I know more about myself. I know more how I feel about ambition, power, success, all of that stuff. But the audience just sees Lady Macbeth. So I think you always have to find, like, what is that connective thread? Like, what can I explore? What's interesting to me, which will then therefore be interesting to the audience because they'll see that I'm connected and in it.
And I think that gives you, and I think that gives like more value to the whole production, to your whole performance. Let's say that it will give you like a lot more value if it feels like it's actually you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a disservice to the audience too. The audience is sometimes paying money, but they're always giving time, right? And I owe it to them, to their time and their money, to be as vulnerable within my own self as the character is being too. No one wants to watch someone just do the show, right? Like, be an investment. What they think they're seeing is the character's investment, but what's actually happening is it's the actor's investment. And then at the end, again, you got to be, as an actor, you got to be able to just snap your fingers, snap out of it, bow, and go grab some beer with your castmates at the bar.
Yeah, of course.
You know?
Yeah. And tell me what you will usually do after a long day, either on set or on stage. What you will do after? I'm
usually always really hungry. I'm always really hungry. It's a lot of energy to act, especially if you're doing like a 3-hour Shakespeare show. So, get out of costume as quickly as I can, clean up my dressing room, clean up my trailer, usually find someone to go grab food or drinks with, if you're doing that's what you do after every show. And it's a way of like, it's such a ritual. I think more than anything, it's a ritual of winding down, because it's kind of nearly impossible to just go home and go to bed because you're still like on. Unless you've been on set for like 14 hours, which happens, in which case you're just like, get me home and a glass of wine and then I'm out. But typically I'm out with people to unwind, to kind of lower that adrenaline. And then if I get home, if I have time and if I'm not too tired, I'll do some writing and some journaling and just some kind of like meditating in thoughts. Gratitude for the night, some gratitude for the time on set. If I'm done fully with the show, if I'm done fully with a shoot, I will typically write a letter to the character, thanking the character, telling them goodbye. I'll make a list of things I learned from doing that character, things I've learned about myself that I want to keep, that I continue to hold on to, and it could be their hope or their faith or their sense of humor or whatever it may be. And then I make a list of things that I want to release, things that I don't need anymore. Like the Chicago PD one, the woman was so traumatized, and that like whole shoot, I was just like screaming and crying, and I was really looking forward to releasing that. Like, I don't living in that space anymore. I don't need to be living in that trauma anymore. But and I'll do like a little meditation and let them go.
Wow, that's really cool. I like that. It's pretty much like therapy.
Yeah, I think I always say to my students, I think acting can be therapeutic, but it shouldn't be your therapy. All actors should be in therapy. Like, everyone should be in therapy, but actors especially, because the more you know about yourself and your own emotional blocks and the way you show up in the world, you're going to naturally take that into every character you play. So if you have time with vulnerability and intimacy as a human being, you're gonna come upon that roadblock in your work too, and that you need to be vulnerable and you need to be intimate as an artist. And so I think therapy is incredibly important. But yeah, every time you're acting, you're untangling something in your own personal life. Exactly. Have that investment, but there's a safe way to do it. I'm a big believer in that actors don't need to be traumatized. We don't need to be traumatizing ourselves in our work. So if you're playing someone who's been sexually assaulted, you do not need to rely on your own memory of that from your own life in order to do that. You have to be safe with how you're exploring your own past memories and experiences, and I don't think you need, and that's just me personally. Some people do that and they do it well, but I'm a big believer in, like, you can craft that and it can be just as full and deep and rich and invested. We don't need to be unhealthy mentally in order to be good actors.
Yeah, true. Wow. Now, moving on.
Yeah.
You also do voiceover. So tell me about that process and how you prepare your voice.
So voice is one of the things I teach at UCLA. So I'm a big proponent of voice care and having a voice routine, vocal warm-ups, things like that. So how I prepare is, this is going to be such a non-answer, and I'm sorry, but it's like and taking voice classes and years of floor work and being in class prepares me for the moment, but also on the day. I sleep with a humidifier so that I'm constantly breathing in moist air. I hate that word, but I'm constantly breathing hydration, especially if I'm doing a voiceover early in the morning. I drink one of these a day. This is my gallon of water, hydration, tea. And then otherwise, just staying up on your training. But I think the main thing that people need to know about voice work is that you are, even if they can't see your body, you are just as physical in the booth. You have to be moving in the booth. You have to be moving your arms. You have to put your whole body into it. And that's expressed through the voice. Oftentimes people on voiceover, if the recording sounds stiff, it's because they're not moving their body. And so being in your body too is incredibly important for voiceover. Yeah,
that's true. Even that some of the voice actors that I have interviewed, some of them told me that even, for example, if they're doing for the voiceover for a video game or something, they will give him a fake gun, so they can have a prop, so they can feel like they're having it, because it's a lot different. It's a lot different when you're holding something, that instead of just saying just stiff and just reading the lines and that's it.
Yeah, and it's incredible how much we can hear come through in someone's voice, how much we can decipher in just listening to a voice. We can tell our caveman brain, maybe we don't maybe we're not logically aware of it, but our caveman brain can tell things like, I don't really buy that that person feels in danger. I don't really buy holding a weapon. I don't really buy that person's in love. We can hear all of those things. And so I think voiceover work it's really challenging in that regard, because when I'm working with people, or even I'm listening my own stuff back, I just close my eyes and I go, I don't buy that moment. I don't buy that moment. And I'll retape the whole thing just for that one moment. And I'm like, I wasn't in it. I dropped it there. Because you can hear it. We're really decoding lies when we listen to people's voices, even if we don't think we are. Our caveman brain is.
Yeah, like a couple of years ago, I watched this video of Bradley Cooper when he was doing the voiceover for Rocket in Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's so hilarious because you will see him doing the face chest and moving like it, and just pretending that he's holding a gun and doing all of that. But yeah, it looks exhausting. That once you're done, you're like, whew, you're pretty much done.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm always hungry at the end of working.
That's cool. Now, tell me, what do you like the most about voiceover?
Oh, man. I guess just the specificity of it. Like we were just talking about, the challenge of listening back and going, how do I make that more specific? Ooh, maybe if I hold something that feels like a gun, or maybe if I, and there's also more technical things too that are exciting and interesting. Like, how do I make it really sound like I've been kicked in the stomach? How do I do that? Maybe if I go, can I cover my mouth?
Yeah.
Put my head away from the mic when I do it. So there's more limitations because you're just using your voice, but those limitations can lead to a lot of creative discovery too, which can be exciting.
True. Now, I'm curious, what is your go-to meal when you're off stage or off set? What is your go-to meal?
Oh God. So when I'm on set, I have a rule for myself when I'm on set. When I'm on set, I only eat healthy food, because craft is my first commercial gig out here in LA was for a Weight Watchers commercial. I wait on the Weight Watchers commercial because their craft services was so good. And it was a 2 or 3 day shoot. And I gained weight because I was just, their craft Weight Watchers commercial, but the food was so good. So after that, I was like, okay, I have a rule. I'm only going to eat healthy when I'm on set. So when I'm on set, I'm gluten-free, dairy-free, low carb when I'm on set. When I'm done with the shoot, wrapped on the shoot, or play, like Italian all the way. I want like pasta. I want pizza. I want wine. I want red wine, or I want beer. Yeah. I'm just a pizza girl in general, I would say.
That's cool. That's cool. Now, on your website, which is really awesome. It has like a lot of awesome things there. Those who are watching, you should definitely check on her website for sure. So we will see a video in which you are doing stand-up comedy. So tell me, what's your approach on comedy, and how did you cut that gig, or how did that happen?
Yeah, so I went through. I was wanting to, and I'm still working on it, writing a solo performance show about just growing up in the South, just because I have so many weird family stories about being from the South, but I didn't know where to start. And so it was recommended to me by someone. They were like, oh, you should check out this group. It's called Pretty Funny Women. And for anyone who's interested in doing comedy, Pretty Funny Women is amazing. I think you should do Pretty Funny Women. They do stand up, and they can help you like craft a 5-minute set. And so I did that in an effort to try to start to craft this solo show. And then from there, it just kind of grew. I did my show through them, and then someone who was sitting in the audience at that show reached out and was like, do you want to come perform here? And I said, sure. And then someone in that was like, I'm from Comedy Store, do you want to come do this at the Comedy Store? And I was like, sure. And I just kept growing. And then I finally reached a point where I was like, if I want to keep doing this, I'm going to need to dedicate time to this. I'm like, go to open mics and really craft stuff. And there are people who are so good at that, and there are people who just love that. And I was like, I love this, but I don't know if this is like necessarily my path. And so I haven't done it in a while, but the time that I was doing it, I had a blast. Met some of the most talented people I've ever met just from, working those circuits. And cool. I have so much respect. I have so much respect for stand-up comics. I mean, it's hard.
Yeah, and actually, I watched the whole video, and you got some pretty good jokes.
Thank you. It's more like, it's more storytelling stuff. It's more about like, again, growing up in the South, because I have some really dark stories about growing up in the South. So part of me was like, I should go do this comedy class to find some. I mean, you've heard it's like talking about people in my family shooting each other. It's really dark.
Yeah, but like when you're talking about everyone has a family who already shot someone, I pretty much got related, because I do have a family member who really shot someone. I was like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, it's like I have 3.
Yeah, that's really cool. And tell me, for that gig, did you prepare like most of the jokes, or you were pretty much improvising here and there depending on how the crowd was reacting?
Both. Yes. I mean, you prepare more than you think you need to. Like, and maybe I was just ignorant to this. I wasn't aware of, and it wasn't until I started working with more comics in seasoned comics and noticing that even the moments that felt improvised, that they were planned. Yeah. Because they were anticipating, they kind of knew how the audience would react. So even those moments that felt improvised weren't. So I was. More of it is planned than what you would assume would be planned. But then, you have to also leave space for listening and for moment-to-moment work, and so that you can be present with your crowd. Because nothing's worse. We've all seen that comic who just like barrels through things, and I'm sure I've done that many times. You just barrel through. You're like, I'm just gonna get off the stage as quick as I can. I'm just gonna say my jokes and leave, and there's no space for there to be like communication with the audience. And when you can relax and enjoy that, it's really fun. But it's also scary.
Yeah. Now, what do you think is the key to make someone laugh?
Being truthful, I think. Sure. I think really honest. Because if you think about the moments when you've laughed the hardest, most of the time you'll say things like, oh my God, it's so true. Right? Like you're saying something like that. Like, me too. And I think the best comics are the ones who can pinpoint those small things where you feel like you're alone in feeling that or experiencing that. And you're like, oh my God. I think that's it.
Yeah, that's true. Now, talking about so you mentioned that you are also a teacher, right? So tell me, what is your goal when you're teaching?
Oh my goodness, it depends on what it is. So like when I'm in my university classes at UCLA, I'm thinking more about that student's growth over the 10-week period that I'm with them, and my goal is to get them from A to B, and in that process, like, really want them to believe in themselves and really want them to believe in their voice. I'm a big believer in, like, we all have a very specific artistic voice, and I think sometimes training can like kick that out of you, sadly. my goal for my students is always going like, what do you want to say? What is specific to you and your upbringing, the things that you see in the world and the things that you comment on? What is that? If I'm coaching someone for an audition, it's that feels different because it's more kind of, I call it like triage. It's more like, let's just figure out what needs to be done for this to tell this story. But the exciting moments in that are when you offer up a suggestion, like, what if you tried this in this moment? And you see them go like, oh my God, I hadn't thought about that. That's really cool, that collaboration. And then you put it on tape and it works. And you're like, yeah, that's it. That's that moment. It's like finding those little specific turns. That's really exciting. But yeah, I think overall it's like in both scenarios, the through line is getting people to really believe in and trust what they have to say. And I'm just that.
Yeah. And what do you think it's missing on teaching these days?
Probably that. I think that especially in the kind of old school training, there's this idea that everyone needs to speak a certain way, everyone needs to talk in standard American, everyone needs to stand a certain way, everyone needs to hold their body in a certain way for the sake of being neutral. And while I believe that it's important for us to assess our own habits and go, what are my bad habits that I'm bringing into my parts that maybe don't need to be there? This idea that we all need to look and sound the same, it's a very like white heteronormative standard, and it a lot of people from doing theater. And so then theater stays kind of this like gatekeepered white space. And so I think there needs to be more flexibility in that. Like, it's okay for you to bring yourself, all of yourself, to the part, and that's, it's not just okay, it's needed and it's vital. Otherwise the performance is flat and boring and it's not going to be connected. No one in the audience is going to feel that, and you're not going to feel it. You're not going to be fulfilled either. So I think that that's really what's missing is sometimes training is overtraining for the sake of neutrality, and then there's no person there anymore.
That's true. Now, tell me what drives you to do like so many amazing things? I mean, what motivates you? I mean, we're talking from voiceover, for doing stage acting, for teaching, stand-up comedian, like all of those things. Like what drives you?
It's funny, I was having this conversation the other night with someone, because I also, as part of my coaching, I prep witnesses and lawyers for trials and depositions. And you wear all these different hats. And I was like, it's all the same hat. Like, it's all the same hat. It's just, we're funneling the tenets of storytelling, empathy, and humanity, and like listening to just fields. But like the way I prep a witness and the way I'm doing the deep dive emotional work with them is the same way I'm doing the deep dive emotional work with one of my students, right? It's all about finding that, again, like kind of finding that door, finding that vulnerability, finding that story that we all have. So what drives me is that, like, I just get so energized by the work, because you're always discovering something new. Like every coaching session, there should be a discovery for me and for my client. Every time I'm acting, there should be a discovery for me and the audience. And it's those discoveries that they keep it fresh and new, but also energizing. So by the end of the day, I've done like 20 things, but you know, I'm hungry and I want some wine. But otherwise, like, you know, I just feel grateful. I feel grateful that like the thing I love about acting can be applied to so many things. So I'm always feeling fulfilled, even if I'm not on set. Yeah.
And I think the fact that you're being like honest and you pretty much show that you pretty much loved it, that also gives like a twist. I mean, that also gives like a plus of how amazing it looks, you know? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think you can tell when someone's enjoying what they're doing, you know? The best takes my students have, I mean, they go, that was your take, how did it feel? They'll go, that was fun. You know, they're like screaming and crying. Like, that was really fun. And it's fun because it feels new and it feels discovered. And so, yeah, I'm like, it should always feel that way. It should always feel fun. Yeah.
Now, tell me, what's the legacy that you would like to pass to the future generations?
I guess this idea of like, and it's going to sound super cheesy, but like, you're enough. Like wherever you're at, like you have to trust that you have a storehouse in your body of characters and experiences and memories and moments. Like, you are so much richer than you think you are, and there are so many doors inside of you. And trust that you are not just 3-dimensional, you're like 20-dimensional. And the more you discover about yourself, again, those discoveries can lead to more insight, which leads to more discoveries and more insight. Like, but it all comes down to the basic idea of like, you are enough. Training is going to help you access those things, find those things. But the best training is really about taking away defense mechanisms and taking away negative thought patterns of like, I need to be something that I'm not. That's what I hope my legacy would be, is that people feel empowered in their art in that way.
That's really inspiring, by the way. That's awesome. And if you could give an advice to the 12-year-old version of yourself, what would you say?
You're gonna have so much fun. That's what I would. Just get ready. I mean, I look like, my God, like I grew up in like a teeny tiny farming community. I'd never even been to California until I was 18 when I moved out here. Like, I just moved out here, never even visited, just like packed up and moved out here. Like, I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like 12-year-old me, I think, would be freaking stoked to know that I'm, being interviewed by you and have an agenda today full of fun acting things and auditions and prepping folks and the thing I loved when I was 12, which is like nerding out again on like the technique and the theory and the why acting is cool. I get to do that for a living. And yeah, get ready. You're going to have fun, I think is what I'd say.
That's so cool. Now, tell me, what's the best chocolate and cheese that you have ever ate?
Oh my God. This is the hardest question you've asked me so far. Best chocolate. Jesus. The best chocolate, I think that this answer for this will be the same place. France. The best chocolate and cheese I've ever had, it's been in France. You can't go wrong with a cheese board in France. Like, you just can't. Like, if I'm out to eat and there's a cheese board on the menu, I will order a cheese board. I'm actually getting lunch today with some friends at a French restaurant in town, and I've already decided I'm just going to get a cheese board for my lunch. That's just it. So the cheese board in France, and I think the best chocolate I've ever had was also in France. Yeah, well, that's so hard. I'm just going to say France. Final answer, France.
Okay. And what's the best pizza you'd ever tried?
Oh, in LA, my favorite pizza place is Lucifer's. The soppressata with jalapenos on it, or banana peppers and extra garlic. Because who cares if my breath smells bad? Otherwise, Italy. Italy has the best pizza, obviously.
Yeah. Okay. And what movie or series could you recommend right now for the week?
If people haven't watched Mayor of Easttown, watch Mayor of Easttown. If you haven't watched Working Moms, show out of Canada that's now on Netflix, watch Working Moms. And revisit the classics, like revisit the classic films. Katharine Hepburn, Vivian Leigh, Marlon Brando. Like, rewatch the classics and rewatch the classic TV shows too. Like, Golden Girls is a masterclass in comedy and jokes. That's what I would say. And listen to Shake Pod. I just want to really fast throw out my podcast. It's called Shake. It is a podcast, Shakespeare and Cocktails. Also check that out.
Sounds like a plan. And my last question, if you could give an advice to someone who wants to follow their dreams right now, what would you say?
Probably that stay connected to your why, figure out why you're doing it, and remember that no one can stop you from acting, but no one can make you famous, and really fall in love with the technique and the craft. Find joy in that. Find joy in the process and your why.
Wow. That is also inspiring as well. All right, Alex. So again, thank you so much for being here. That was really interesting and very inspiring conversation. Those who are watching, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure that you're following her right now. Also, if you're listening to this later on the podcast, make sure that you put pause for a bit, follow her, leave a lot of likes, and then come back. And as always, thank you so much. I mean, you are super talented, and the fact that you love what you're doing and you put so much passion on it. Everyone can tell here that you are super talented. I cannot wait to see more of your awesome work. And before I send you off, I need to send you off again with an epic send off. So here we go again. So okay, sorry. So thank you, and keep having an amazing rest of the day. Also wish you a great weekend. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, y'all.
All right. Have a good one. Bye.